From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
One little pig on a mission.
Stay there, dude.
See what it took to capture Pickles the piglet. The push is on to help increase biofuels production in the country.
So we would hope that EPA would take this opportunity to send a market signal for growth and keep the RFS on track.
As farmers fight to gain back their ground in Ukraine.
Can't tell you how many farms I've been on in Ukraine where every piece of equipment is destroyed.
The effort to keep American producers informed about a war thousands of miles away that could have direct impact on their way of life. This morning on AgDay.
AgDay, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when the testing grounds meet the proving grounds. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The U.S. now has a 10-year bilateral security agreement with Ukraine. The two sides signing that agreement on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy last week. Now that agreement follows months of negotiations between the two countries. Now there is no money tied to that agreement, but President Biden says it's designed to make Ukraine self-sufficient, to defend itself, and is a step for the country to push to join NATO. Ukraine's president says the agreement is crucial not only to the security of Europe, but everyone in the world because Russia's war is actually a global threat. This as farmers in Ukraine continue to struggle as the war rages around them. Illinois farmer and philanthropist Howard G. Buffett has been to the front lines a dozen times and continues to share his experiences with farmers in the U.S. as part of his Whistle Stops for Ukraine tour. The stakes remain high as the battle between Russia and Ukraine continues. While here at home,
I'm going back for my 12th trip here in a few weeks.
Howard G. Buffett and the German Marshall Fund continue their Whistle Stops for Ukraine tour this month in Waterford, Pennsylvania, just outside of Erie.
The amount of times that Howard had been to Ukraine personally and some of the experiences that he had had there really do help characterize what's going on.
During a discussion at Troyer Farms, Buffett shared his experience from the roughly 40 days spent on the front lines.
Can't tell you how many farms I've been on in Ukraine where every piece of equipment is destroyed.
His foundation is now on track to spend some $800 million in Ukraine by the end of the year. Money spent on food and machinery as farmers deal with 85,000 pieces of equipment destroyed, grain stolen, and fields bombed or littered with landmines.
The number of acres, the level of damage, and then characterizing the type of damage that farmland's gone through and the amount of equipment that's been destroyed, and then trying to figure out how you would farm around that yourself was pretty powerful.
You know, there's a lot of misunderstandings about agriculture in Ukraine today and what's happening, so we're here to see if we can answer questions and see how farmers feel about it.
For fourth-generation potato farmer Mark Troyer, the conversation was eye-opening.
We sit there and can say, oh, we've got labor issues, we've got weather issues. I mean, one thing, we sure don't have landmines to deal with, and so when you throw that in the mix and to have maybe people roaming the countryside that want to kill you, it sure makes it a little bit eye-opening on how good we have it here.
While Pennsylvania grape grower Nick Mobilia agrees.
I think this is the first time we really heard a lot of the truth about what is going on over there and what the consequences are going to be if we as a civilized society and all the other nations don't get together to lend a hand and put an end to this.
For his part, Buffett is now working on ways to help demine an area roughly the size of Colorado, including experimenting with equipment running over explosives to see how it can be hardened against the blast.
But blowing the stuff up is to understand if we hit something, even though we think we're going to avoid it, if we do hit something, what parts do we have to have? You know, what's it going to take to fix it?
While he's working in Ukraine, these farmers are asking what they can do from Pennsylvania.
I think when I get home, I'm going to call Congressman Kelly up and we're going to have a little talk and let him know what I just found out and what we as the Farm Bureau can do to help him in his job to make sure that our country is doing what we should be doing.
As the debate at home continues, Buffett says he remains focused on the future of farming in Ukraine.
I can tell you, if it doesn't affect someone, they don't care about it. I can guarantee you that. But so our job is explain why this is affecting and will really affect you in the future.
It's very easy for all of us to kind of get tied up in our own little world here, and I mean, it's planting season, and we sit there and focus on planting our crop and trying to get it in the ground.
And from his view from the front line, Buffett believes the ripples of this conflict are likely to be felt for generations to come.
Yeah, your grandson's going to see a different world based on the outcome of this war.
Happening right now, hot, dry temperatures and high winds are fueling wildfires in California and New Mexico. You're looking at video right now in the small town of Ruidoso, New Mexico. Since earlier this week, people have been evacuating as the fires have moved in. Farmers and ranchers from the area evacuating the animals they can. One man sharing his video of what he faced as he tried to evacuate his cattle. And here's another look from that area at what's become known as the South Fork Fire. Hundreds of people trying to escape the flames. New Mexico's utility company warning it was shutting down power to the area for public safety reasons. The nearby city of Roswell providing shelters for residents leaving Ruidoso. Heavy rain and some thunderstorms in the northern plains and upper Midwest are now shifting into the central plains. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has more on that and if there could soon be a break from the heat.
Yeah, we're looking at relief from the heat in parts of the Midwest, but it's not the kind of relief that we want. We're going to be monitoring the atmosphere for a few pockets of some stronger, if not severe, thunderstorms. That includes parts of Illinois into Wisconsin and then back down here towards Iowa and Missouri, but also in the panhandle of Texas and even into Oklahoma. Also down here into parts of Texas as well. This is more tropical in nature, or this is more of our traditional severe weather setup for a few locations. Otherwise, by Thursday, severe weather threat shifts all the way up to the northeast with pockets of some heavier rain coming through. And this is going to be on the northern fringe of the ridge of high pressure that we've been talking about going back to last week. So again, it's this up and over with some of that energy, possibly producing some stronger thunderstorms back into the northeast. Again, there's a severe storm risk coming in on Thursday. And wow, look at this terrific shot from Dave of his corn crop in Manhattan, New York City. No, I'm kidding. Manhattan, Illinois. The stalks there with the beautiful sunrise behind it. Truly a picture-perfect shot. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
A bipartisan group of 18 senators is urging EPA to set higher biodiesel and advanced biofuel mandates for 2026 under the renewable fuels standard. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us. And Michelle, EPA is currently working on those guidelines. What are lawmakers and biofuel groups asking for?
Well, despite higher biomass-based diesel levels for 2023 to 25, evidence is suggesting the need for significantly higher volumes to match increased U.S. production capacity. While biofuels groups haven't released a specific production target, they and lawmakers are pushing for higher volumes for 2026. The senators are being led by Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota and Chuck Grassley of Iowa, citing Energy Information Administration data indicating current biomass-based diesel blending mandates are significantly below production trends. Biofuels industry groups agree the volumes for 2023 through 2025 were unjustifiably low based on the current and future capacity.
So we would hope that EPA would take this opportunity to send a market signal for growth and keep the RFS on track. As Administrator Regan has said, he's taken pride in getting the RFS back on track. We hope he sticks to that, and they propose a robust volume for 2026 and beyond here in the near term.
Since last year's levels were set, renewable identification numbers or RIN values have dropped 66%. This has led to facility closures, job losses, and disrupted rural economies. Confirmed RIN values have collapsed due to the unjustifiable RFS.
What happens when the volumes that they set are well below what's actually coming online? The value of the RIN that's associated with those gallons obviously is going to decline. So what's the result of that? Well, we have less production coming online. We actually have two biodiesel facilities that have shuttered, one in Iowa and one in Wisconsin, and unfortunately, we might see more of that.
Lawmakers and biofuels groups have also warned this negative signal threatens investments in renewable fuel production, including sustainable aviation fuel. Biofuels groups recently sent a letter urging EPA to set the robust RFS RVO levels and put the directive out on time.
What we're afraid of is that they're not doing that or have no intention to finalize it by the end of this year. And in our view, that's a terrible missed opportunity to send a signal for growth for the biomass-based diesel industry.
By statute, EPA is required to have the 2026 numbers finalized by November of this year. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. New this morning, USDA says it's suspending avocado inspections in Mexico. The agency citing security concerns for USDA workers' safety, but it did not say what prompted those concerns. Produce already cleared for export will not be affected by the decision, but avocado supplies in the U.S. could be impacted if the pause on inspections drags on. A USDA spokesperson said the agency is committed to resuming inspections as quickly as possible. Something similar to this happened back in 2022 after a safety inspector received a verbal threat. Now, the suspension was lifted days later after Mexico put additional safety measures in place. Meanwhile, the California Avocado Commission is calling for a big crop this year with an estimated volume to exceed 250 million pounds. That's 20% higher than the preseason estimate. It reports about 60% of the crop has been harvested, with about 40% of the California avocado crop still maturing. Mexico's plan to ban imports of genetically modified corn is set for a hearing next week in Mexico City. The U.S. argues Mexico's measures violate the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which mandates science-based food safety measures. Now, the U.S. Trade Representative claims that Mexico has not proven any harm from genetically modified corn. Mexico, however, argues there are health risks from consuming large amounts of genetically modified white corn not accounted for in U.S. studies. Crop condition ratings trend lower, and that helped push grain markets higher. We'll have details next. And later, this is one way to keep a lean hog. See how Pickles the pig ended up on a high-speed chase in California in the country. What a difference a day makes, with corn futures posting corrective gains along with soybeans after a big drop on Monday. Michelle Rook is back with more on what this all means in markets now.
Row crops to the plus side on Tuesday with cattle setting back. Brad Koima is with us with analysis. And Brad, let's talk about the grains first, corn and soybeans. Nice pop there. Was it all technical or was it the lower crop ratings?
I really think mostly technical. I would say, we're right down to the bottom side of what's been the recent trading range in the corn. There's a bit of an okay story on low crop corn, in my opinion, tightening basis, at least where I live, good exports generally, and an ethanol margin. So a little bit of a story there. And the bean thing, it's almost back to the lows of the move. So one would hope this early in the growing season that we would build a little bit of what if, weather risk back into the market here.
Cattle market back lower on Tuesday after we had new highs for the move on Monday on the heels of that record cash trade. So, is this just some routine profit taking, or is the market a little cautious here ahead of this upcoming cattle on feed report?
After having that kind of a day on Friday, what do you do for an encore so you catch some profit taking? August cattle, the heavily traded month, of course, right up almost back to but had been the high of the move. So you're going to attract a little bit of hedge pressure there as well. There's always a little bit of a mentality, Michelle, of the market tops the day the news is the best sort of a thing. That's not the mood I'm in here. I like the fact that we continue to be extremely current, lack of supply in the north, and the market's still trading at a pretty big discount.
And so will those things combined continue to mean the cash trade might be record again here for this week or not?
It's hard to duplicate what we did last week when we were putting it on like that. But I'm going to say that I think, and note the large volume of negotiated trade. People will argue with me, but I believe strongly that whenever you trade a lot of cattle, you also have a higher cash cattle market. My expectation, though, I guess they bought a lot of cattle last week in my neck of the woods. I'm going to call the north steady at around 198, and we'll see if the south can't maybe drag its way a little closer to more like a $6 discount instead of the 8 or 10 like they are now. And
you're still optimistic going into the end of the year?
Yeah, well, we talked about 200 plus. We didn't know we were going to talk about it right away now. Yeah, I am. And I think, particularly if we start to see some heifer retention, I think the end of the fourth quarter, the beginning of the first quarter of next year, we could have one of those moonshot deals like some of our other markets have had.
Thanks so much, Brad Koima with Koima Varlick. We'll have our AgDay coming up. Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rourke on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Remember a little bit ago we looked at the severe weather potential. So this is the flooding potential. And there's kind of two areas that we're watching for: more traditional severe weather, but also heavy downpours. Notice this is on the northern side of the ridge of high pressure. In this kind of environment, high humidity, high temperatures, you combine the two and we can squeeze a lot of water out of the atmosphere in these locations. So about a 5-15% chance of some flooding, or at least a flooding potential in and across parts of Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, also back down here towards the west. Different story in Texas, specifically San Antonio near Houston, Brownsville area. That's up there towards a tropical type system moving through. Again, it's worth monitoring, but those two systems, whether it's a green and yellow up here or more of the red down here, are separate in what is going to be threatening those locations. Again, there's the flooding potential on Wednesday. As we go into Thursday, we keep that pattern around on the northern side of this ridge of high pressure, ridge riders as we call them, and then tropical in nature more down here into parts of Texas. So what this looks like when we look at the jet stream coming up on Wednesday, it's at saddle point. Once again, ridge of high pressure out here towards the east. Severe weather threat back out here towards the west. In between this trough and this ridge of high pressure back behind me here. See that smaller circle? That is a tropical system that could impact parts of Texas and especially into Mexico. Again, that's on Wednesday. By Thursday and Friday, the ridge continues to fill in and across the United States with a few troughs and even a cold front trying to come through. Want to take this all the way out into next Friday. The pattern, it shifts. It doesn't completely change, but it does shift back to more of a trough, ridge, trough type pattern as we get into next Thursday and Friday. So the reason I point that out, look at more widespread storm chances developing in and across the United States as we head later into June. Start off with Connecticut, partly cloudy, high around 89 degrees, low of 66. Ariel, Mississippi, the temperature is going to be in the mid to upper 80s. Same thing with Aba, Georgia, Dancing Queen, high around 89 degrees.
China is taking on European farmers by launching an investigation into EU pork imports. It comes just days after the EU announced tariffs on China-made electric cars. The Chinese government has said it will take, quote, all measures necessary to protect our legitimate rights and interests, end quote. Analysts warn an escalating trade war could break out, raising prices for consumers and hurting exporters and their workers on both sides. EU exports of pork products to China hit a peak of just under $8 billion back in 2020. That's after Chinese farmers were hit hard by African swine fever. Since then, they have dropped to $2.6 billion last year. People seem to really want their bacon these days. In fact, bacon prices are sizzling while ham prices are cooling off. Here in the U.S., according to inflation numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, bacon is nearly 7% more expensive than it was a year ago. Meanwhile, ham prices, they've dropped more than 6% since last year. Experts say the rising cost of bacon is largely due to demand. Bacon prices aren't the only thing on a high these days. Check out Pickles the pig, how he took California police officers on a high-speed chase, next. Pork producers know what it's like when one of those little piglets break free, but one precocious piglet in California gave police the old shaken bacon. Take a look. Police in Sebastopol received multiple reports of a piglet running in and out of a highway. Now, when they arrived, they found a little piglet who they said proved to be very fast and very strong for its size. Officers and several other folks joining in the chase, following the pet piglet named Pickles for several city blocks until Pickles was finally cornered in a yard about 30 minutes after the chase began. Now, Pickles was later reunited with its mom at the scene. Police elected not to charge Pickles with resisting an officer or for hogging city resources. So how did he manage to get loose? Well, Pickles' mom says she was taking him home when he pooped in the back seat of her car. As she cleaned up the mess, Pickles made a break for it through the open car door. And a great distraction with Pickles there. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great